My background is that I had started an organization called the Responsible Endowments Coalition. It's 100 college campuses across the country looking at the $400 billion that schools manage in their college and university endowments. So every time that you get that letter in the mail asking you to donate to your alma mater, great, go ahead and donate, but ask them, how is my money being managed in the process, right? That this is an incredible resource that we have. From there, I was asked to start an investor network called Tonic, which supports 60 investors globally, putting $100 million to work in early stage investments. Over 4 years, I evaluated over 500 investment deals, and we did 33 of them. So got a very broad sort of range of what was happening in impact investment, and started to have a lot of misgivings around this word impact. It's a really slippery word, and it's one that we as imperfect human beings, right, have to decide sort of how we're going to define it. Because the Merriam-Webster definition of impact, to impinge upon or to make contact, especially forcefully, that doesn't sound that good, right? That's let's join the impinge upon people movement. So how do we figure out the ways to better define this for ourselves, and what do we lose if that goes wrong? And the reason that this question is so crucial right now, JP Morgan, who knows if they're right, but they're projecting $400 billion to $1 trillion going into this movement over the next decade. That's 5 times as much as official development aid. So the ways that so many communities are used to getting their resources is rapidly shifting under their feet. So it makes it a really crucial time for us to figure out, well, what is this impact thing gonna mean? And with that, what we're finding is that it's often investors and people that look like me, or not even people that look like me, usually men, who are setting the agenda of what impact investment is. And I would argue that this is dangerous, both for investors and for the communities that we want to serve. So I wanted to share with you 2 stories of an impact investment gone right and an impact investment gone wrong, to help you become more conscious consumers of impact investments as these are coming sort of down your pikeway, either as individuals or for institutions that you might be connected to. So I want to take us down south to Oaxaca, Mexico, to one of the greatest reserves of wind energy on the planet. And the World Bank, the Mexican government, and a couple Spanish and Australian companies had come together to create Latin America's largest wind energy project. 700 million invested in Mirena. Essentially, it was the opportunity to really have that triple bottom line of impact, to be able to work on indigenous land in partnership with indigenous communities and create a huge source of wind energy while creating financial return. So sounds pretty good, right? If we're impact investors, Donna, would you invest in that? Almost, okay. So everyone thought this was a great idea, except for the indigenous folks who were given contracts in Spanish, which is not their language, who were offered $50 a hectare for their land, who had agreements signed with community leaders that weren't actually the folks from the community. My favorite story when I got to visit this year was that the public comment period was a 2-week-long period where the documents were posted on the internet, all right? And I'm sitting in this town where there is no electricity, and they get a letter in the mail saying, congratulations, the 2-week comment period is opened. If you can make it to an internet cafe, good luck to you. So this community started fighting back. And one of the things that we started to see, the statements out in the indigenous communities, stop the intimidation, hostility, and violence generated by not oil, not gas, by wind energy, right? This is the last thing as an impact investor that I want to see. And I can also understand how easily I would have been duped into that story, right? And what wound up happening, the good news here is that the community, well, good and bad news, for 2 years put up a roadblock, stopped the project, which meant that investors lost a ton of money. It was a huge risk problem. And it means that the community didn't get wind energy. So I can't consider that a win, right? It means that they're still going to be running on petroleum. And it means that we have to figure out a smarter way to do this, right? To make sure that we can get those wind farms, but respect indigenous rights in the process. So this sort of reflected some broader challenges and trends that I was seeing in the impact investment market overall. That investors and entrepreneurs were constantly profiting at the expense of communities who were made marginally better off. A $4 a day job sounds great if you're making $2 a day, but not when $20 is being extracted from your community and from your country in the process. That impact was getting defined by the investors rather than the beneficiaries, right? Which is why it was so easy to say, well, we got more wind towers on the ground, so that's good enough. If there's a little collateral damage, no problem, that's not our metric. And that finally, it's very difficult for communities to be able to participate in this movement, the same way that many of you may think, all this investment language and it's foreign and it's hard to jump in. Now imagine if you're sitting in that village without internet. How are you supposed to keep that investor accountable who supposedly is working on your behalf? Where's the philanthropy stepping in to make sure that these communities are prepared? And I wanted to sort of highlight, do folks know who this is? Any memories? I'm seeing Sally Struthers, right? So this is the old aid paradigm, which is the look at the babies with the flies on their eyes, these poor children, right? That we were taught that people couldn't do anything for themselves. And that impact investment was supposed to be a response to this of how do we help make beneficiaries really empowered to do good work. And I was recently at a conference where the Inter-American Development Bank was doing one of their presentations, and they showed, here's the new paradigm. Children with cell phones, right? And it's that now they get to be consumers. So somehow we moved from this paradigm where communities were the recipients of projects to now they're consumers, which is not necessarily any better, right? What we're missing from the story is how do they get to be protagonists? How do they actually get to be the ones that are developing their own future? And this is where I, as an investor, started to really think through how could we invest differently in a way that turns the kid with the cell phone into actually getting to be the owner of his future. So we came up with 3 main principles that we called transformative finance, and transformfinance.org is where you can find all this. But essentially, we focus on projects that are designed, governed, and owned by affected communities. So not just selling stuff to poor people or buying it from them, but actually making sure that they are part of the ownership process. We make sure that we're adding, rather extracting value for communities. How am I doing on time? Okay, duly noted. And then balancing return between investors, entrepreneurs, and communities effectively. And I just want to tell one story, not 3 as I would have done, of how this actually gets actualized. So because as an investor, I said, these are great principles. We always have great ideas and principles. How do you actually do it, right? So let's go back to that community in Oaxaca. And the indigenous folks there decided, look, we get it. We are not against wind energy. We are just against corporate control of our land. How do we create our own wind farm that we can own? And they teamed up with the head of the Global Wind Commission, Sergio Saransky, who quit his job to start the Yansa Group and work with this community, which is now developing a community-owned wind farm. And that is going to be a $60 million project, right? This is not easy things to do, but that's precisely the point, that impact investment, you can work at a scale that was unimaginable in the context of philanthropy and could really transform their community and transform the way that energy is delivered. Now, I could tell you 8 other examples of these sorts of investment projects that are live now that people can put money in. There's a report of case studies on transformfinance.org, which I'm happy to send to everyone. And then my firm is Pi Investments. We're a single family office that's investing in these types of projects. So at any rate, just want to conclude on, and I can leave the URL here, that for people who do want to do impact investment differently, there are opportunities, and that we're really happy to support people through that process. So I would support everyone in dreaming big and seeing how we can really grow a new economy together. Thank you.